everybody? Happy New Year and welcome back to Batman Arkham Videos, yet another developer Q&A. My name is Matt Walker. I'm producer on Batman Arkham Shadow, and I'm here with...
And I'm Ryan Payton. I'm the director of Batman Arkham Shadow.
And today, Ryan, we have a special guest with us.
We have somebody with us.
We do.
First time ever.
Would you mind introducing yourself?
My name is Dr. Eric Bender. I was the subject matter expert in mental health working behind the scenes on Batman Arkham Shadow.
The shadow exists within us all.
I couldn't stop him.
Come on, new friend. Let's join the others.
We got a couple things to talk about here today, Ryan. First, what have we been doing over the last couple weeks here? I feel like we have been working on the game, haven't we?
Yeah, the team at Camouflage has been hard at work on version 1.3 of Batman Arkham Shadow. It's coming out at the end of January. It's going to have a number of different features. We're adding a new post-credits scene to the game, New Game Plus, and a few other things, which we're going to talk about at a later date. But for today, we really want to focus on the behind the scenes of Arkham Shadow in a spoiler-filled episode, by the way. So if you haven't finished the game, I highly recommend you hit the pause button on this video, go finish Arkham Shadow, and then come back. So you can hear about all the fascinating things we were able to do with Dr. Bender in our effort to make sure that the game was infused with as much accurate and true to life as we could depictions of these deep psychological related topics that we wanted to explore in the game.
I'd give anything to unload the rest of what I got up here.
I'm really excited about this. I think this is gonna be a lot of fun, man. We're just the amount of knowledge that Eric has about this stuff. It's so fascinating.
It is, and actually maybe at the start, it'd be interesting to hear about Dr. Bender, if you wouldn't mind just kind of telling us about like what's your day job and like
Sure.
and how do we get connected?
I am a psychiatrist and I have a psychotherapy-based practice in San Francisco. I see children, teenagers, adults, and couples in psychotherapy. One way I work with mental health and media is as I did with you guys and trying to add some psychological depth to characters and making sure that depictions are accurate and not stigmatizing. Other times I'll look at depictions. So I've done that for GQ and for Wired and some other outlets, looking at TV shows and films and characters people love and talking about the mental health behind that.
That's how we came across working with Dr. Bender, actually. In fact, it was one of our colleagues, Riley Dannenbring, who sent me a YouTube link of one of the videos that Dr. Bender did with GQ as he was exploring these different DC-related characters. I found it fascinating, and I immediately thought, hey, I got to reach out to this guy. So just emailed Dr. Bender out of the blue, and thankfully he responded and he was interested in working with us on our game.
Well, I mean, I think that really prompts kind of the first question, something that I think is really core to this discussion, which is why is it important then to accurately portray explorations of mental health in popular media?
It's really important because people get their information from the media, whether accurate or not, and want to make sure people understand mental health as best as possible and that they're not afraid of it. So many people deal with mental illness or some aspect of mental health. It's a part of our story. It's a part of who we are. And really telling that story, making it not a after-school special like from the 80s, but actually incorporating it into the characters and into their stories, I think is really important. It helps to not make people who are dealing with mental health issues scared or afraid or stigmatized or feeling like they're stereotyped.
Well, you know, I mean, you figure too that, frankly, mental health is a core aspect of the Batman franchise, right?
Yeah, it's one of the things I was immediately attracted to with Batman way back in the day, right? Which is unlike a lot of different superheroes tales. Like there's something about the Batman universe in which the writers and whether they're film directors for the films or even the games, right? Just exploring these deep psychological themes just seems like it's part of the DNA of Batman and has been for decades.
Such a happy couple. Shame about the kid, though. Poor little Brucey never quite got over it now, did he?
I think this is a great jumping off point to the next question then, Ryan, which is, what is the process then that we took when working with Dr. Bender here?
Well, I'd love to throw it back at you, Mr. Matt Walker, me and Mr. Producer and all on the project. And yeah, you produced the work that we did with Dr. Bender. So if you don't mind, like what was the process in working with him?
Correct me if I'm wrong, but yeah, from what I can recall, after we reached out and we agreed to actually start talking, right? We essentially had calls, maybe once a week or so.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of times we'd have all the writers in the room. Sometimes it might have just been a couple of us. It wasn't all of us, right? But we'd be on a call with Eric and there'd be kind of two different scenarios. One where we're prompting Eric with questions so that we can kind of figure out high level where we need to take certain aspects of the story in a way that's going to make sense, right? And in a way that's going to work in terms of mental health, right? And then the other thing we would do is once we'd have something written, we'd have discussions with Eric then and say, okay, Eric, please read this beforehand, and then let's talk about it, right?
That's how I remember it. It was great. It was like having a patient I look forward to seeing every week, just like all my other patients. I want to know what's going on with the writing group and what's going on with the story, what's going on with Batman, what's going on with all these different characters. Where are they in their journeys? And it was really rewarding. And I was very flattered to be a part of it and to be able to add something to it.
During the calls, I know I learned a lot, and I thought that was really fascinating. That was probably my favorite thing about our working together. And I'm just curious if you have any favorite moments of working with us.
I have a lot of favorite moments. Some of my favorites started right away when I just had a chance to log onto the call, and I would see Ryan, I'd see you, I'd see a whole bunch of other people, writers, actors, and just we got to talk about the story, and I got to see this character that I really love and figure out where is he going and what are these people in his world doing and how can I add to that. And it just being able to, at the end of a day where I'm seeing patients one-on-one, have a group I was working with, that felt really nice. But one of my favorite moments too was down on the PCAP stage in Los Angeles and getting a chance to see all the work you guys were doing and everything you'd asked me to contribute, to see that come together in real life. It was really neat. And then I had a moment where Troy Baker nudged me and said, "Hey man, that's your stuff they're filming." And I looked over and I was listening already, but then I thought, oh yeah, I remember the scene. I remember saying this, and I remember one of the actors saying this and one of the writers asking me about that, and Ryan saying, well, what if we did this? So it was really cool to see it come to life.
Mm-hmm. And I think you were saying too that Troy very much learned from this experience, and it's something that he's been talking about as well, right?
Yeah, it was. Troy's now been a big evangelist of the process that we introduced with this title, right? Working with Dr. Bender and us, whether it's on the development side or on the writing side or on the actor side as well. It's just ensuring that we're just informing everybody and teaching everybody about the accurate depictions and answering everybody's questions. And so you just feel more informed, more confident about what we're doing. And it also feels good because we feel like we're representing these interesting issues or challenges that people have in real life and doing it in an accurate way.
Yeah, the accuracy was absolutely there. The other thing that I really liked is incorporating that as part of these characters. It's part of who they are. It's how they see the world. It's how they understand how people are seeing them. And so just getting an idea of, okay, this person might be experiencing Gotham because of this, that was really cool to add to and to understand.
Yeah, for me, my favorite thing was learning from you about, for instance, there's Harvey Dent, right? And Harvey Dent has got DID. We were also trying to factor in the shadow in our game and learning the difference, and also how DID is formed was something that I thought was really interesting, especially because it turns out that DID is often formed because people have certain traumatic experiences that they need to kind of shield themselves from, right?
Yes, absolutely. Dissociative identity disorder does develop out of trauma. Now, not everybody with trauma does that, but it is a way to cope and deal with trauma. So for instance, all the horrible abuse that he experienced at the hands of his father or other traumatic experiences that he dealt with, he found a way to dissociate from that. That's a coping mechanism to get out of it, to feel like it's not yours. And over time, he develops this dissociative identity disorder. And it's important to know not everybody with trauma does develop this. And the shadow piece, it's not related necessarily to DID. The idea that Jung had was that everybody has a shadow, these parts of ourselves that we've repressed as we've grown up, as we've become more pro-social, and as we're socialized, we push down things, anger, aggression, those types of things. And he thought there's actually some good things in there too. So that's separate from the DID issue, but it was really cool to be able to bring out in all these characters the way you were asking me to. All right, what would be parts that we want to learn from, that these characters could learn from that was part of their shadow, whether it was Batman or whether it was some of these other characters in the game.
Yeah, it was, and one of the hints that you gave us, and you remind us that it's not everybody who does have dissociative identity disorder had a similar experience, but that oftentimes these past traumas happen during an individual's childhood.
Yes.
And it was one of the reasons why we ended up exploring that, all those different flashback sequences with young Harvey and young Bruce. And I think that was really helpful for me to kind of structure the game around that. And then also working with Troy Baker, who loved these sessions, and now the circle is complete because now he's on YouTube talking about the work that he did with Dr. Bender to further inform how he needs to perform this character.
And so we would meet twice a month, and I would have a therapy session essentially as Harvey Dent, and we would talk about the character.
Well, Ryan, there are actually very specific instances too of things that we learned that got into the performance very specifically because we heard them from Dr. Bender here as an example, the way that Two-Face changes, right?
That's right. Yeah. So one thing that I kind of assumed was just how it worked in reality was for folks who have a dissociative identity disorder, like Two-Face does in like the previous games or in some of the films, he quickly switches between the two alters or multiple alters, right? And you were telling us that that's actually not an accurate depiction, and that there needs to be something more of a tell or some sort of. Yeah.
There's some marker. Sometimes it's a physical motion, or it's maybe a sound somebody makes, showing that there's a switch into another personality. And I really liked watching Troy do that. And he even took it further, because one thing we talked about was that each personality has to have some relationship to the original personality. There has to be some reason this is happening. So that's why I love that it wasn't cartoonish. It was clear that, okay, this person would protect Harvey, or this person would act out the violent feelings that he might have had towards his father that he couldn't act out as a child. So there's a reason for each of them. And I remember one of the coolest moments for me was Troy actually asked me, why would Harvey no longer show this altar? And I was saying, think about the relationship he'd have to that altar, and maybe that altar's finished serving him in some way. And then he's like, oh, and it was really cool to watch him take that in.
What is this? Who put this in my hand?
And it was really cool on one of the mini calls we had with you when you told us that one of the side effects or one of the related symptoms for somebody who has that mental health challenge is memory loss, which was very convenient for storytellers in the Arkham universe, right? Where, you know, Batman and Two-Face do come face to face later in the franchise. And that was a big relief for me to hear that we could maybe lean into that a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. People that have DID can have memory loss, and they'll have sometimes a closet full of clothes they don't remember buying, or notes. They'll come into the physician's office and say, Doc, I don't remember writing this note. And then you can talk about that and say, what was that like to find that? And you explore more. So it was really nice to see that they fit into the story, but it's also very real. And you did incorporate that headaches that Harvey might have, or other things like that.
Yeah, trouble sleeping.
All that.
All right, Ryan, I'm wondering, would you mind telling us the story of how we came to the competency hearing? I understand that there were a certain problem that we had to face.
Yeah, one of the greatest creative challenges we faced developing Batman Arkham Shadow was the big courtroom scene. It was a scene where we knew from very early in development that we wanted to have the player in the dock, in the courtroom, and depict throwing the acid onto Harvey Dent's face and creating Two-Face right there. It was something that has never been depicted in the Arkham franchise. We knew we wanted to do it. We're on the MetaQuest 3. We can do something that's highly immersive, but how, from a story perspective, can we make that work and make sense? From also those game design considerations as well, but also what's the conceit for why there would be this hearing or a trial to begin with? And so we showed up with all these different ideas, and then Dr. Bender's like, well, technically speaking, it wouldn't make any sense to have a lot of what we had going on originally. Right. And so that led to it being a competency hearing, right?
Yes. I do remember that. That was also another fun moment for me, is when you would say, okay, this is what we're going to do. I'd say, that would never really happen in real life. or that would take 3.5 years, not 15 minutes.
Yes, right.
So,
because we needed that trial to happen, or it wasn't even a trial. We just needed a courtroom scene to happen very quickly.
Yes. And occasionally that can happen in real life, where the judge is in front of somebody and says, wait, is Dr. So-and-so still here? Maybe can he just lay eyes on this guy? Something like that. But the way we had initially talked about it, I was like, yeah, that's not the way the forensic system works in the United States, even if Gotham is in the United States, which I assume it is. So, but it was great because you guys responded saying, all right, well, how would it work? What could happen? And you created a great scene.
Well, as soon as we had this discussion, we absolutely had, we had our writers, we had Chris Sims, for instance, really look into the lore to figure out, like, okay, is this something we can do without, stomping on something else that's happened elsewhere, right?
Oh, that happened across the entire game, but especially in that scene, because the Arkham franchise references this moment at various points. And we had all that stuff up on a whiteboard, up on different documents about this is how they describe what happened in that courtroom. And so we made sure that everything we did was respectful and accurate to how it was described in previous Arkham titles, while also ensuring that it made sense and would actually happen in real life.
Yeah, and I appreciate you guys too being like, okay, that might be real, but remember, this is a video game, so we need to have some license. So I'm like, yeah, okay. Yeah.
The group therapy scene in Arkham Shadow felt raw and authentic. What was the process for creating that scene?
Well, that scene and the interrogation scene, and even to an extent the competency hearing scene, were all really challenging scenes for us to create because on paper, they don't seem very exciting for the player to perform. It's a lot of listening and a lot of dialogue, heavy spaces. And so you would think, hey, this might be boring or there's not enough engagement for the player. But I think to the credit of our writing team, to Warner Brothers and DC for just continuing to encourage us and say, like, yeah, you guys got something special. Just keep going and keep digging in. To the designers who kept creating multiple iterations of those scenes we would play over and over and over again. That led to scenes like group therapy that I thought ended up being some of the best moments in our game. That scene in particular was something that I was pushing for early on, which was originally inspired by a moment in one of my favorite games of all time, and arguably, I would say, one of the greatest virtual reality games of all time, which is Resident Evil 7, where it has this kitchen table scene where it's very intimate. You only have a handful of characters, they're pretty close to you, and you can have this kind of interesting dynamic where you're looking over at this character, then talking to this character, and they're not far away, it's very intimate, and we really modeled the scene after that. And then I think just in large part, thanks to the guidance we received from Dr. Bender, but also what the writers did to just lean in to the extreme irony that you have with Bruce Wayne under a different identity, basically spilling his guts out to these people who don't know who he is and being extremely honest to this group of people about his past trauma. And then doing so, obviously not knowing at the time, to the man who killed his parents. And then to see how Armin performed Joe Chill and how he reacts to that is, I think, some of the best moments, not only for the game, but some of the best moments we've ever done as a studio.
My parents were both murdered in front of me when I was a kid. I saw it. I couldn't stop it. I froze.
You know, it's interesting. It ended up becoming a really engaging scene. And you kind of alluded to this earlier, but we had some thoughts that, you know what, we don't want people to just sit there and like listen to people talking for too long. So at one point, you'll probably remember this, we had a TV. Right?
Yes.
And so the idea was that we were going to have some other character on the TV. Maybe
we're going to have Waylon Jones. We're going to have Killer Croc.
Yep.
Were you part of
No,
this?
I wasn't part of
and so I think we could talk about this because unfortunately, some of the players in the community have found some files buried within the game, and they're like, what are these 2D images? And like, what's this monitor with Killer Croc on it?
Yeah.
And the idea was, and it was kind of like a joke that's born out of when you're working in COVID, because Waylon Jones couldn't be there in person, either because he's going to eat everybody, or maybe he's got COVID or something. But we've got somebody on Zoom basically, and we've got Killer Croc joining the group therapy scene, but via Zoom, basically. And it added like this extra layer of comedy.
Yeah.
Because of course we're gonna say, hey, Killer Croc, you haven't, your mic is off, or could you reconnect, or something. We were gonna have these moments, but it just ended up becoming just too much and too funny, because we're diving into some pretty serious topics here, and we wanted to just really hone in on that.
Yeah.
All right, question for you, Eric. Fans often relate to Batman, but find his villains more compelling. Psychologically, why do you think we're often more intrigued by the villains than the heroes?
I think people love villains for a lot of reasons. One is they're unpredictable. We're not sure what's going to happen, whereas we have an idea, Batman would probably do this, Superman would probably do this, other heroes would probably do that. But villains, we don't know. So they kind of keep us on our toes. We're drawn to that. The other thing is it's the darker side of humanity a lot of times, particularly in Batman. We're curious about that. We want to know, what would it be like to be like this? And we know safely watching these movies, these characters, these games, we're not going to become that villain. But what would it be like to see these things played out? People also have this part of themselves that's darker. This is the shadow, the whole idea behind the shadow that Jung talked about, seeing it played out. Like, I can identify with that angry person. I can identify with that aggression and that violence. But you're not going to go out and do that. So I think it's a safe way to experience this darker side of life. And also they're sometimes really interesting characters, if not all the time.
What's most misunderstood about characters like Joker or Scarecrow and how they're typically portrayed?
What's most misunderstood, in my opinion, is that because they have whatever mental health issue they have, they are therefore violent. They are therefore going to kill people because they have whatever mental illness it is. So the Joker often is called psychotic. Psychotic means having a break from reality. So you have an experience of hallucinations, hearing things, seeing things that might not be there. Usually hearing is more common. Or you might have delusional beliefs. some people will say, oh, well, that's the Joker, but if you look at the whole picture, the Joker is more of a psychopath. So he has a lack of empathy for people. He uses people as pawns to get what he needs. He doesn't belong necessarily in a facility to have his mental health restored. He knows what he's doing. He knows what he's doing is wrong. We have evidence for that. So it's most often that the Joker's called psychotic, and I'm like, he's not psychotic. He knows what he's doing. If you look at this game, the Joker wasn't in it too much, but we could have him interact even in a way that hints at, yeah, he's not playing by the rules. He knows what he's doing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
All right, Ryan, I got a question for you. Many people were surprised at Arkham Shadow's portrayal of Harleen Quinzel, expecting her to be far less caring and sympathetic in her approach. How did you go about approaching her character for the game?
Well, I think it's something that we did with a lot of the characters, which is I think there's the kind of assumed expectations about where these characters will be in the timeline of the Arkhamverse, but there's so many years of events that take place between Arkham Origins and Arkham Shadow and then all the way to Arkham Asylum that we can have a lot of fun. We can kind of go into these deep backstories and developments of these characters before, for example, with Harleen Quinzel, before she becomes Harley Quinn. And for this character in particular, I was excited about exploring different psychological topics. And one in particular is that I knew that she was going to start off on the wrong foot with Batman, because that's kind of the way that they ended with Origins, right? Pretty adversarial relationship.
Exactly.
But I can't remember exactly where I read this, but then that's when we would sort of loop in Dr. Bender on this phenomenon in which there can be some sort of kind of past trauma or relationship issues that some folks have that will then kind of open their heart up to people that maybe they normally wouldn't connect with. And because Batman showed some caring towards her, she kind of wakes up and is like, wait, maybe you're not that bad. And so by the end of the game, you've got this, what I find, hilarious dynamic between the two, in which there is a little bit of like some mutual respect, and it's kind of an odd couple type of dynamic that you helped guide us through.
Yeah, it was really neat to see the development of Harleen, and I was cringing sometimes because I wished she had a good supervisor, and the supervisor meaning a senior psychiatrist who was guiding her. She had really good instincts. She gave Wesker something that could be a way for him to communicate with her. She did really good things. I did find that there were moments I would also cringe and be like, oh, I would never say that to a patient. No, nor should any psychiatrist ever say that to a patient. But again, if she'd had the guidance, that would have helped. And she didn't hear. That was the point, that Crane was who he was. So it all fit. It was really cool to see.
If I could get through to even just one, that would be enough. Just one.
And I think people ended up really falling in love with this version of Harleen Quinzel because of the work that we did, and I think we made her more relatable. And I think Tara Strong just nailed the performance. I knew that she was going to be good, but I didn't think she was going to be that good.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I remember, you had mentioned this when we were talking previously, but a lot of us read the Harleen graphic novel.
Yes,
right?
absolutely.
And a lot of that was really inspiration for kind of how we wanted to treat this character, to really show more of what she was like before she was Harley Quinn, right?
That's right. All credit goes to the writers in that graphic novel, because that was a huge source of inspiration for me. And then we ended up sending Dr. Bender a copy of it. And then, a couple of days later, we have our calls, and here he's got the book, and he's got all these like Post-it notes and everything. We were just drawing so much inspiration from that.
Yeah, it was fun. It was, for me, it was a forensic case. Like, okay, if I'm looking at this person, what in their past might influence what they're doing in the future? And there were moments in the Harleen novel that I read. I was like, oh wow, this really fits with why she might feel this way about herself, and why she might be drawn to Joker, or why she might at some point want to interact with Batman in this way. And we as people have this tendency to recreate relationships in our lives, even if they're not healthy for us. And so there were moments when she would recreate some relationship where maybe she wasn't respected by Batman, and she's used to not being respected. And part of her didn't seem to like that about herself, but she found a way to interact with him where, as you said, it was an odd couple, but it was true. It was, I could say, yeah, that would happen in real life.
Ryan, we've got a lot of great anecdotes so far. I'm just curious though, what was your favorite aspect of working with Dr. Bender?
Well, invariably after an hour or 90-minute session with Dr. Bender, where we learned so much, and we're taking all these different notes, and it's just unlocking so many things for us. At the end of the call, everybody would be kind of dropping off of Zoom, and you and I are typically sharing an office. And so, yeah, we finished the call, and you turn to me and you say, God, that was fascinating. It happened every time, and I agree with you. And it was my favorite aspect of working with Dr. Bender, is that, like, on cue, Because it was fascinating.
It was so fascinating, man. I mean, already just even the Q&A, there's so much really interesting stuff we've learned.
Yeah.
Well, little did you guys know, 6,000 miles away, I'd end the call, go upstairs, and go eat dinner, and my wife would ask me how was the call. I'd be like, God, that was fascinating.
Yeah, it was a great partnership, and hopefully we can continue with whatever we work on next.
Yeah.
All right, well, I'm out of questions, everybody. Big thanks to Batman Arkham Videos. As always, Batman Arkham Videos provided all these questions that we had today. Otherwise, I think that's it until version 1.3. Ryan, you got anything else you want to say?
Yeah, I just really want to say a big thanks to Dr. Bender for all the great work that you did on the project and what you brought to it. I can't even imagine shipping the game and telling the story that we want to tell without your help. In fact, we told a very different and better story because of you. And I know that the players, based on the response we've got from the game, do appreciate it as well.
Thanks. I was very humbled and touched to be able to work with you guys and to have a part in this.
And a big thanks to, of course, the crew here at the Tokyo Meta office for on the first day back from the break, getting all set up, and we're here recording another video. To Batman Arkham Videos for hosting this video, and for everybody watching this for your interest in the game and the behind the scenes that we're doing. And now, Matt Walker, we just have to go back to the office, as we always do, and then start working on the big update that we have for the game. And hopefully we'll be back on this channel again, talking soon about all the updates we have coming down the pike for Batman Arkham Shadow.